at the Zagros Mountains. They rise like folded time, each ridge a scar of history, each valley a whisper of civilizations that once crossed and vanished. This is not a random mountain chain. This is the spine of Kurdistan, a living wall that has both divided and connected worlds, a geography that breeds independence. More than 1,000 years ago, within these ranges, a Kurdish state emerged, brief in years, vast in impact. The Hassanwihid state was not an empire carved by imperial decree. It was a principality built by instinct, by strategy, by necessity. It was born not in palaces, but in fortresses, not in capitals, but in corridors of stone. This film is not about nostalgia. It is about cause and continuity. How geography became strategy, how strategy became governance, and how governance in the hands of mountain rulers became a declaration of identity. If empire is the art of ruling from a distance, the Hassanwihids showed how power could rise from within, how a state could breathe through mountains. And so our question begins. How did a Kurdish mountain principality turn into a political project that would outlive its walls?
Before anyone called it a state, this land already had its grammar of authority. For centuries, Kurdish tribal confederations had managed fortresses and mountain passes, keeping order through reputation, alliance, and blood. Dinavar, northeast of today's Kermanshah, controlled trade and pilgrimage routes. Hamadan and Nehavand guarded the inner corridors between the Iranian plateau and Mesopotamia. Among these power centers, the Aishani lineage, led by Ghanem and Vandad, held influence for decades. But empires move like weather. The Buyids and Samanids, Persian and Central Asian powers, collided along the Zagros frontier. When that storm hit, Dizam, son of Ghanem, was defeated by Buyid forces. Abd al-Wanhab, son of Vandad, was captured. Two pillars fell, and into that vacuum stepped a nephew, Hassanweh ibn Hussein al-Barzikani. He inherited no throne, only opportunity. Through persuasion, calculation, and force, he gathered the forts of his uncles, unified rival captains, and forged a new coalition of clans. Where others saw collapse, he saw convergence. The Buyids needed loyal allies against the Samanids. Local tribes wanted self-rule. Merchants wanted safe roads. When such interests meet, a new center of gravity forms. That was the seed. A political organism was beginning to grow, not from ideology, but from function. Who could protect the caravan? Who could tax without ruin? Who could mediate before vengeance? The answer, increasingly, was one name: Hassanweh. The conditions for statehood were forming, quietly, inexorably, in the folds of the Zagros.
States are not proclaimed, they are accumulated. Hassanweh built his one decision at a time. He forged an alliance with Hassan ibn Buweh, leader of the Buyids, not as a servant, but as a negotiator.
The deal was clear. In exchange for military support and yearly tribute, Hassanway gained fiscal and administrative autonomy. He could rule his mountains as he wished, so long as golden grain flowed east. But power attracts challenge. Salan ibn Masafir, ruler of Hamadan, contested Hassanway's growing reach. What followed was more than battle. It was a struggle for legitimacy. The right to collect taxes, to guard roads, to decide who may trade and who may pass. Through shrewd diplomacy and marriage alliances, Hassanway transformed rebellion into recognition. His principality now had both sword and seal.
If you wish to understand why the Hassanway Principality prospered, don't count the battles, read the map. The Zagros is not isolation, it is intersection. The routes connecting the Iranian plateau to Mesopotamia slice through Hassanway's territory like veins of gold. Control the roads and you control the economy. Control the economy and you control history. Trade caravans from Rai to Baghdad passed through Dinavar and Harsin. Pilgrims bound for Mecca and scholars heading for the Abbasid heartlands crossed these mountain passes. Hassanway's administration learned that one secured caravan could yield more prosperity and more legitimacy than a dozen victories. Markets were organized, tolls standardized, and taxation recorded with precision rare for its age. Villages near passes received protection in exchange for maintenance. Merchants paid fixed rates, not bribes. Bridges, warehouses, and caravanserais turned geography into economy. The result was stability. Revenue flowed consistently, funding fortresses, irrigation, and roads. This steady governance made the principality an island of security amid the turbulence of empires. When a small Kurdish state guarantees safety for travelers between Baghdad and the plateau, it is no longer peripheral. It becomes indispensable. And that was Hassanway's quiet revolution, turning the rugged spine of Kurdistan into an artery of civilization.
When history tries to define belief, it often forgets how belief behaves in power. The Hassanwayids have puzzled historians for centuries. Were they Shia, aligning with the Buyids' ideology? Or were they heirs to an older faith, the Yarsani or Kakai spiritual current that flowed quietly through the Zagros long before Islam reached its heartlands? The sources disagree. Some Persian chroniclers describe them as loyal Shia governors. Kurdish oral traditions tell a different story, of rulers who protected Yarsani temples under the guise of Shiism, masking mountain mysticism within courtly orthodoxy. But to Hassanwayid and his successors, labels mattered less than survival. Faith was not only personal, it was political. Declaring Shiism brought legitimacy and alliances with the Buyids. Protecting Yarsani rituals preserved the loyalty of mountain tribes. The Hassanwayids built bridges not just of stone, but of creed. Their approach was pragmatic, almost modern, ruled by inclusion, not exclusion. No temple was destroyed, no sect entirely suppressed. A delicate balance emerged between theology and diplomacy. That duality between creed and practicality would become the very DNA of Kurdish governance for centuries, plural, flexible, yet deeply rooted. And in this blend of faith and realism, the Hassanweids discovered something profound, that spiritual tolerance could be political strength. In 979 CE, Hassanwei died in his fortress of Sarmaj, near today's Harsin. His death, like many founders, brought not unity, but rivalry. Two sons, Fakhr al-Dawla and Nasr al-Dawla, inherited both ambition and resentment. Fakhr sought control through arms. Nasr sought it through alliance. Their clash mirrored the eternal dilemma of Kurdish history, the sword or the strategy. Fakhr fought and lost. Nasr negotiated and won. By aligning with the Buwayids, Nasr al-Dawla turned diplomacy into weaponry. He traded loyalty for legitimacy, tribute for recognition, and in doing so, extended the Hassanweid map far beyond its founding borders. Under his rule, the principality reached new horizons. Dinavar, Nehavand, Asadabad, Burujerd, Ilam, Ahwaz, Halwan, Sharazur, and Kirkuk. From the high ridges of the Zagros to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, a mountain emirate had become a regional power. For a time, Kurdish banners fluttered over caravan routes, river crossings, and city gates, not as rebels, but as administrators. Nasr al-Dawla's success proved that a principality could expand not by conquest, but by contract. He had learned his father's lesson. Power is not what you seize, it's what others allow you to keep.
Out of that era of turbulence emerged one of the greatest Kurdish rulers of his time, Badr ibn Hassanwei, known as Nasir el-Dalwa wa el-Din, the defender of faith and state. If Hassanwei had built the foundations, Badr built the edifice. He understood what many medieval rulers did not, that power without management collapses under its own weight. So he transformed his principality into an organized administration, combining fiscal rigor with social order. He restructured taxation, abolishing arbitrary levies and outlawing monopolies. Markets flourished under consistent rules. Caravans could travel from Hamadan to Baghdad, knowing the tolls in advance. Predictability, not fear, became the engine of prosperity. Badr used his revenue to build. He invested in roads, caravanserais, and public markets. He ordered bridges repaired after winter floods and funded mosques, khans, and workshops. To the poor, he was a protector. To traders, a guarantor. To scholars, a patron. One of his greatest innovations was the public market project near Hamadan. There, artisans could buy raw materials at subsidized prices to build public infrastructure, bridges, caravanserais, and mosques. It was in effect an early model of public-private partnership, centuries before economists coined the term. And to seal his statehood, he minted coins in his own name. A gold piece from 402 AH, 1011 to 1012 CE, weighing 4.26 grams, bears his inscription. Small, round proof that the mountains had achieved fiscal sovereignty. When a ruler mints his own coin, he declares, "We exist." Badr ibn Hassanway turned a local principality into a functioning Kurdish state, an organism of governance, not just territory. Power can be seen in soldiers, but civilization is seen in stone. The Hassanwids left both. Their greatest fortress, Sarmaj, near today's Harsan, was not merely a military citadel, it was an administrative brain, a mountain stronghold where scribes, soldiers, and diplomats worked side by side. From its towers, commands reached valleys stretching to Nehevand and Ilam. Here, architecture became a tool of policy. Height was security, but also visibility. Yet the true marvel of Badr's reign was not a fortress, it was a bridge. The Kashkan Bridge, near today's Pol-Ded Doctor in Loristan, stood like a stone horizon drawn across the river. It stretched nearly 320 meters and carried 12 arches, 9 of which still survive today. It was engineered in the late 10th century, during the very period of Badr's institutional reforms, a decade of stonework and mathematics. But the bridge was more than infrastructure. It was metaphor. It connected not just the two riverbanks, but two worlds, the mountain and the plain, the tribal and the administrative, the local and the imperial. When a caravan crossed that bridge, it wasn't just crossing water, it was crossing the threshold from chaos to order. For Badr, building was ruling, and every surviving arch of that bridge remains a stone proof that Kurdish hands did not only defend civilization, they built it.
Under Badr ibn Hassanway, justice was not decoration, it was infrastructure. He turned moral authority into a governing mechanism. In a time when rulers taxed the weak and rewarded corruption, Badr enforced fairness as policy. He inspected markets in person. He replaced arbitrary fines with fixed codes. He punished officers who abused their rank even when they were family. To his administration, justice was not a sermon, it was a schedule. One story, passed from village to village, captures his rule. A poor woodcutter once complained that a soldier stole his bread. When Badr heard this, he ordered the soldier to carry the man's heavy bundle of firewood through the market until he collapsed in shame. When the soldier tried to bribe his way out, Badr refused. Gold cannot wash dishonor. The tale spread faster than any decree. Through discipline and mercy, he built a state people could trust. He banned monopolies, stabilized prices, and ensured that wealth circulated beyond his court. To modern ears, these may sound like economics, but in the 10th century, they were revolutionary governance. By ruling justly, Badr didn't weaken his power, he hardened it.
Every principality faces its test, and for Badr, it came as a Buyid army marching west. In 377 AH, 987 CE, the Buyid general Kara Tekin was sent to break his growing independence. Outnumbered and surrounded, Badr devised a plan that still reads like a military lesson. He pretended to retreat. He abandoned his camp, food, supplies, tents, everything. When Kara Tekin's soldiers flooded in to plunder, discipline dissolved into greed. That's when Badr struck back. His cavalry surged from the ridges like thunder, cutting through the scattered invaders. Within hours, the Buyid army was shattered. Kara Tekin escaped with only a handful of men. It wasn't just victory, it was a demonstration. Power in the mountains belongs not to numbers, but to knowledge of terrain and timing. 2 years later, in 379 AH, Badr sent troops to support Fakhr al-Dawla, a Buyid prince, not out of obedience, but calculation. He had learned to use armies as instruments of negotiation. To fight was to bargain. To win was to be left alone. He turned military force into a diplomatic tool, playing empire politics without being devoured by empire logic. The Hassanawayhid army became a mirror of its ruler, small, disciplined, elusive, and strategic, never fighting for conquest, always fighting for space.
No mountain stands forever. After Badr's long reign, the Hassanwayid state began to fade, not with a fall, but with erosion. The causes were not dramatic, but cumulative. Internal rivalries fractured the unity he had built. Local governors grew ambitious. Trade shifted. Alliances thinned. The Buyids, once partners, were weakening. New forces were rising. The Anazids in the west, the Kakuids in the south, and far beyond the Zagros, the first Seljuks gathering momentum on the steppe. Power doesn't collapse, it transfers. The Anazids took Shahrazur and Halwan. The Buyids reclaimed parts of eastern Dinavar. By 1047 CE, Ibrahim Inal, a Seljuk commander, swept through what remained of Hassanwayid lands. The old fortresses still stood, but the banners had changed. And yet, decline did not mean disappearance. The Hassanwayid name lingered in tribal memory, in coins unearthed by rivers, in the broken arches of bridges. They had proved something, that governance could rise from geography, not decree, that a mountain could govern itself and leave behind more than silence.
So what did they leave behind? Not an empire. Those fade like empires always do. They left a pattern, a prototype of government drawn from Kurdish soil, taxation with record, justice with restraint, tolerance with purpose. They proved that a small principality, if administered with discipline and empathy, can outlast empires in memory. From Dinavar to Sarmaj, from the Khor Oduit Bridge to the passes of Harsin, their works remain carved into landscape and language alike. Even in ruins they whisper, "We were here and we ruled well." Ibn Khaldun later noted that Kurdish groups were among those who supported the Abbasid cause. That link matters. It shows the Hassanids were not isolationists, but connectors, the bridge between mountain autonomy and imperial civilization. They didn't reject the world beyond their valleys, they negotiated with it. Their legacy is not nostalgia, it is method. They turned faith into diplomacy, justice into law, and geography into administration. And that fusion of conscience and control remains the secret formula of every enduring civilization.
Over 1,000 years have passed. Empires have risen and fallen, borders redrawn and renamed. But look closely. The mountain lines are the same. The routes, carved by Hassanwihid guards, are still the highways of trade and memory. The idea born here did not die. That a state can grow from the mountains, not imposed from capitals, but shaped by terrain and necessity. That governance is not foreign to Kurdish soil, it is native to it. The Hassanwihid state was more than a dynasty. It was a declaration, whispered across centuries. Kurdistan is not the margin of history, it is one of its foundations.